Welcome to the first module, finger painting. Now I know I call it finger painting, and it's similar to what you did as a kid in elementary school, but it's a whole lot different. There are three different things that you have to concern yourself with. One, obviously, is how you apply the paint. Number two, how you spread the paint. And number three, how you remove the piece of paper on top of the paint, as you will see when we do it. We're getting ready to do it here. What I have here, I'm going to tell you what you're going to need. You're going to need a piece of, I'm going to use a black that I have found sitting around the house. It's a black canvas board that you can find just about anywhere in any craft store or art store. And then tops of any kind of a little thing to raise the canvas up off of the flat surface. You're going to need 4 of these. These, because the paint's going to drip, and you're going to use these not only in this but in the airbrush one, and virtually everything that you do, you're going to need these also, that when you spray at the end, when it's dry to spray, you're going to need these also. Anyway, I'll put that back over there. I'll set the canvas back on there. Then we have all of our paints, bunches of paint sitting here, and a rag. You're going to need a rag. Also, let me bend over here for a minute. This is something else that comes in very handy, as I said in the introduction, an hair dryer. Like I said, I found this one at a garage sale for $1, and it works just fine. So you might want to try doing the same thing. We'll use this a little bit later. Okay, I can't think of anything else that we really have to talk about. Oh yes, there is one other thing. The paper that you're going to put over the paint is a freezer paper, pretty much like this. You just tear off a piece of what you need, and the nice thing about it, it's plastic coated on one side. You can't use a regular paper because the paper, it will soak, the paint will soak through, and you're going to end up with a big mess on your hands. And one other thing that you're going to need, or at least I think you're going to need, let me dig them out here, I'm not really too prepared here, rubber gloves. Those will also come in very handy. So, without further ado, let's get started on this, and we'll get it done, and then you can see what it's like, and at the end I'll show you some other things that you can do with this kind of a technique called putting them on paper, scan them, and then you can make prints. Okay, I'm going to shut this off for a minute, redirect everything, and we'll get busy. Okay, first thing, you'll notice that I had my paint clothes on. We have our little board here. I put on my rubber gloves. Everything is pushed up to the top so you can see the things are underneath it. And we'll start, we're going to do mostly purples and pinks on this one. This is just to show you how it's done. Nothing I'm going to save. So let's start with purple sunset. Shake them up real well. Put a little bit of this one on there. Now you have to decide what your paint's going to, your picture is going to look like, and then put the paints on there accordingly. So we'll start squeezing a little bit of this on. There. 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 Now a light blue. And sometimes you want to put them right on one on top of the other, sometimes alongside. It doesn't really much matter as far as what you're going to do. You can go across it like this. I'm not really trying to make any particular picture from this. This is all experimentation that you guys will do when you get onto it a little bit more. Put a little bit more blue over here. Okay, some pink. And just kind of spread it around wherever you feel like to do experimentation. What you can do instead of using canvas to start is to use a watercolor paper, and I'll show you that here a little bit later. And it's a little bit chilly out here. It's only like 58 degrees, so it's going to be a little more difficult than what I would like to have done, but you got to do what you got to do when you can do it. And just kind of move it around. And while you're putting it down, think also how you're going to spread it with your fingers, because that's when the finger paint part of it comes in. What's this? Nah, I don't want that one. Ew, that looks terrible. Let's see what else we got here. Oh, there we go, some violet. Shake them up. You can already see I'm getting paint on my hands. You don't always have to, but I'd like to use gloves because I get tired of washing my hands and they get chapped up and like that, you know, so. Sometimes your paint, when it gets a little bit older in the jar, it kind of tends to clump a little bit inside, and it doesn't really come out well. And some hot pink. Ooh, yeah. And one more. We'll try to find a nice light purple here. Got to have one here someplace. There we go. Lilac. A little bit of that there. Some around there. Put a little bit in those two little spots. A little bit between the two and around and over the top. Back over here. Some up here. Down along there. Up in there. And a little bit right there. Okay, we got all our paint on. So now we got to get a piece of the butcher paper. Put my paints away. Get a piece of the butcher paper here. Pull it off. Like that. Now you'll notice that it has one side is kind of shiny, the other side is dull. Okay, this you can see through very well. Once you've got it done, you lay it over the top of the paper, like over the top of your thing. Get it to where it sticks down a little bit without really messing up with your paints yet. Very light touch. Also, when you're doing this, you also want to have a very light touch. Now, I've got it on top of my rotary table, but it doesn't really make any difference. You don't have to have the rotary table up. It's just that I'm kind of cramped for space, so this is the way I have to do it. Now, you can see through here, you can see the different paints for the most part. So what you want to do is move them out. Here's where the finger painting part comes in, okay? Spread it around, however you want to do it. Just keep in mind that while you're doing this, you have to kind of envision what it's going to look like, and this is where all the experimentation comes in. You've got to experiment with this stuff before you can actually make a decent painting. Believe me, I wasted a lot of time. Went through 4 or 5 tablets of watercolor paper just to get the idea of how I wanted it to work. And if you use watercolor paper and the paint and use some tape, it's not that expensive. You can do a lot of experimentation. Okay, well, you saw that I had my fingers on it. What's going to happen if you don't smooth it out is you're going to end up with fingerprints, little blotches or little spots of paint that are not really covered. So what you do now is just smooth it out. Like that. Okay. Now comes the third step in this to get your painting. There's a lot of ways that you can pick up the paper. You can pick it up this way, or this way, or you can pick up corners, or you can pick up all 4 corners. Now, another thing that you can do, but I'm not going to do it, I'm going to let you experiment with that, is when you get the paper picked up pretty much all the way with this gap about like that or like that, you can actually turn the paper. It's not going to work on this one because it's on the turntable. But remember, when you're picking up the paper, you can turn the paper as you're picking it up, and it will also make a different effect. So let's see what we're going to end up with here. I'm just going to go to the sides like this, pick it up, And there you go. That's what you end up with on this one. You see how all the paint's dripping and everything? Now, another thing too that you might want to consider doing is to save these, and you can make another, like a rubber stamp of the paper onto another what am I talking about here? Onto another canvas or another piece of paper, and then move it around on that. You can do 2 or 3 stamps. You can end up with all kinds of really cool stuff. This one I'm just going to throw away. Don't have any need for it anymore. And that is how you do this. So, there's not a whole lot to it. It all comes into the experimental part, is where you're going to have to really work at it. As I said, you can pick up the paper on the 4 corners at one time. There's a lot of different ways of doing it. Now, also, there is, if you want to experiment, you can get you a watercolor pad of paper like this. This works very well. I've gone through dozens of these. And then while you're doing that, you can also, because it's about the same size, in fact they're exactly the same size, as you can get a palette paper. The palette paper is also, let me see if I can get it opened up here. It has a coating on one side and it's flat on the other. And you can use this just like you do the butcher paper, although I will say the butcher paper is considerably cheaper. So now you have the rag. Hold on to a spot where it's not, there's no paint. Wipe off the bottom and right along the edge, because it can drip. And I'm just going to set this one aside because we're going to have to use it for something else now. So that one is done. Okay, I'm going to turn off the sound, and I'm going to show you some pieces that I have done in the past with no sound. We'll just go through them rather quickly to give you some ideas of what is possible and what can be done. So we're going to turn this off and we'll see you a little bit later.